So much is known and celebrated about the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Less is known about just how this young magnetic preacher was introduced to pre-civil rights America. A new book co-written by NewsNation's Dan Abrams is setting out to change that and enlighten people. In Alabama versus King, Dan and his co-writers look into the unusual trial for Dr. King and others born of the historic 1955 through 1956 Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott and how it changed America. I want to say good morning to you, Dan. So good to see you. Congratulations. A lot of people are familiar with Rosa Parks, but most of us don't know anything about what happened following that boycott. Can you give us a quick history lesson?
Yeah, so as you point out, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat in December of 1955 on a bus. She's arrested. Protests ensue in Montgomery, and let's be clear, these protests were not just a result of what happened to Rosa Parks. These protests were a result of days and months and years of mistreatment by bus drivers in particular, of African-American riders. People forget it wasn't just about segregation. It was the daily indignities. It was having to go pay your fare, literally walk off of the bus, go walk into the back again. Sometimes the drivers would leave, sometimes the drivers would hit the passengers, et cetera. That's in addition to, being called horrible names, et cetera. So they just had enough, right? And there's this massive boycott that, as you point out, many people now know about. But what few know about is that as a result of that boycott, there was a trial where Dr. Martin Luther King was prosecuted criminally for organizing a boycott. It was an arcane old statute that existed, and they indicted Dr. King and 89 other people, in essence, to try to force them to get back on the buses. And it wasn't working, so they used the criminal law. And what's so interesting about this case and why this case is so important is this was the first time that Martin Luther King was ever mentioned, seen, heard of on the national stage. He was the leader of this movement, but it wasn't as if he was a huge activist who was, so well known. He was basically a compromise candidate who'd been selected to just help them try to figure out how to get people treated better on the buses. But as the prosecution happened, this really evolved. The prosecution completely backfired and made Dr. Martin Luther King a national and international figure as the media and others covered what was happening in this case day after day, listening to the accounts of ordinary Montgomery folks talking about what they endured. And by the time this trial ended, the civil rights movement in its earlier stages had a leader in Dr. King. And that's why this case is so important, and the details of it, because I think it's been forgotten, in part because as a legal matter, it may not have been that significant. As a practical matter, it was critical.
And interestingly, you co-wrote the book with Fred Gray, who was then Dr. King's attorney. What an honor. I mean, he's in his 90s. He had no intention of trying to change the world either. He just wanted to change Alabama, from what I've read.
Absolutely. And Fred Gray will be on my show tonight on NewsNation at 9. I'm so proud to be working with Fred Gray on this book. And I'll tell you, I think Fred Gray is one of the most underappreciated civil rights heroes in America. He wasn't just Martin Luther King's first lawyer. He was Rosa Parks' lawyer. He was the lawyer who argued in front of the Supreme Court to end segregation on buses, among other many very high-profile cases. And so the fact that Fred Gray had agreed to work on the book with us was, first of all, obviously was an honor, but as a practical matter, it allowed us to get these insights in the book. In his words, I mean, every other book that my co-author and I, David Fisher, and have written about these sort of forgotten trials in history, we've had to make some guesses about what might have happened. We have to go do some more research. Can we see,
right.
Is there any reporting out there? Not here. We can just go after Fred Gray himself.
It's amazing. And I know that he's honored to be a part of this project as well. The book, Alabama versus King, is out now and available everywhere. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.